Hi, Jacob Field here. I just wanted to take the time to quickly introduce some new features we've released overnight here at Ripehouse, always working to improve the product. It did come about by some conversations I was having yesterday with a user to try and make these streets a little bit clearer. It did correlate with some thinking and work we've been putting together lately around suburb level information and how we can view that on a map. And make our suburb selection a little bit more scientific or even simpler in a lot of cases. So let's jump right in. This is the main map analysis page within Ripehouse. This is where you do all your street level and property research for a suburb. But it's also where you can view information around the suburb itself and its neighbouring suburbs. So, you're very familiar with the area over here on the left, which is all about the street. That applies street level overlays to a map, in this case public housing, in this case owner occupiers versus tenants, all about streets over here on the left. And over here on the right we've got some controls around the map itself, adding properties to the map, but then also suburb versus suburb information. So the current functionality or the previous functionality is allowing you to view capital growth scores for suburbs. This is a demand and supply measure. The darker the blue, the higher the capital growth score for the suburb. So once you've got a viewable area set, as soon as you move that viewable area, it will take that off the map because the suburb mix has changed. But once you have a viewable area in mind, you can zoom in and out using these toggles. Once you have a viewable area in range here visible, any of these toggles over here on the right hand side relate to the different suburbs that are actually in this viewable area and loading up the different metric for those suburbs. So we've added a map type switch button here at the top. You can actually just toggle that. It will cycle through the different map types available. Some of them may be clearer than others for different suburbs or different geographies. So you can flick through those to view the different map types. That's a new button, that's new functionality. But what is also new are these 8 new suburb level metric toggles. So any of these here, based on your viewable area, move it around, zoom it in and out based on the suburbs that you'd like to analyse. You can now select any of these 8 toggles, and that will turn on overlays onto the map in a similar fashion relating to that specific metric. So in this case, we're looking at yield. We've got 33. It will pull this drop down here, which explains what's going on. It will say that there's 33 suburbs in the viewable area. The minimum yield is 0%, which is very light in colour, so that some of these very light areas over here potentially have a yield of 0%. What that means, it just means that there's not enough reliable rental properties that have been rented in the last 3 months to form a reliable yield, so therefore it defaults to 0. It may even be that there's actually no rental turnover or volumes in these suburbs, which may be rural or very low density. Right through to the darker red areas. In this case, for the yield overlay, for the yield toggle, the darker reds have the higher yield right through to 5.1%. So it basically gives you an explanation there around what is happening. The link here is actually to this video, so it's happening, that will be uploaded and that will click through to this video explanation here, and you can hide that drop down. So what it's showing there for your visible area, as soon as you move this map, it's going to pull this information off and reset itself, but the darker the red, the higher the yield for the suburb. And we can probably see that down here at Rothrall, it's a little bit higher yielding, and over here into the rural areas into the inland, lower yielding is what I'm sort of quickly seeing. You can cycle down through all of these toggles, occupancy type here. So in this particular case, the darker the red, the more tenants. The lighter the red, the more owner occupiers. So some of the darker regions, so Caboolture's probably got the most tenants in this area. Morayfield here is quite red, but some of these lighter red areas have low percentage of tenants and lots of owner occupiers. Rent, in this case, darker red, higher the average rent for the suburb. So you can see some really interesting patterns with suburbs. So this is vacancy rate. Darker red, the higher the vacancy rate, so quite low vacancies all the way through here in Morayfield in the centre, along the rail potentially. One Dakabin has a very high vacancy rate. Price, in this case, so based on the different metrics, the different shadings actually means a different number. So sold price in the last 3 months, some of these suburbs actually haven't turned over at all. Some of them go all the way through to 985,000 in the dark reds. We've got volume, days on market as an example. So the volume is sold volume in previous per month. But I wanted to jump through and skip down to growth here. So the growth measure maybe needs a little bit of explaining. This is looking at previous quarter sold values and then comparing it to previous year. And then it's looking at the trend of those. So you can see some of the very lighter shaded suburbs have actually decreased in price by 1.3% in the last quarter versus last year. And the darker red areas have actually increased in price by 19.9% in the previous quarter versus last year. So some of those need to be treated with a grain of salt. We are dealing with some very rural areas here which have very low stock turnover. It might only have 5 sales a year, and one of those, if one of those is extremely large or a large block size or large, grand property, etc., it can really blow out the sold or the growth figures for low volume suburbs. So that is the danger of this. It is probably worth zooming in, so we've got a nice tight range on the suburbs that we are looking for as an example, and then applying the, if we're looking at Caboolture Morayfield here over to Beachmere, then we can apply the map again, and that's got to tighten in the range to just 9 suburbs. So we can really play around with our zoom levels and the number of suburbs in the mix to try and find some accuracy and pattern. So it's all about navigating through different suburbs that may have similar characteristics. I think probably one of the really nice uses of this is coming into a local government area and looking at the suburbs that have that minimum level of tenancies. So if we are coming into Moreton Bay, we've got the viewable area set. We've clicked on the occupancy type toggle. We've got 32 suburbs selected. Some of these darker red areas have lots of tenants, or a reasonable number of tenants, closer to that 50-50 split, which is the darkest red has got 47.8% tenants. So the darker the red, more tenants. Let's focus on the darker red areas which satisfy our investment strategy. Some of these really light shaded areas have lots of owner occupiers, or virtually all owner occupiers, and might not work for us. So this is probably one of the real key uses that I would use it for. Coming into Moreton Bay, which suburbs are going to be investment stock, and which ones can we quickly jump across to, which may have some potential. So I hope you find this functionality useful and improves your suburb level search and comparisons. It's just more information to process and to give us confidence in our decisions. I would love some of your feedback. If at any time you've got some feedback, you can click down here in the bottom right-hand corner. That will bring up a chat bar, which you can chat with us directly. We have moved things around slightly on the page just to organise things a little bit with a little bit more logic and clarity. And nothing has been taken away. It just might be in some slightly different spots to give priority to the more important areas. So yeah, love your feedback. I hope you find the new functionality beneficial, and we'll always try to improve. So if you can think of anything else, let us know. Thank you.